Hello everyone, and welcome to this third video in our series on how to listen to music deliberately and try to describe what we are hearing. In music, there is often lots of different things going on all at once, and it can be hard to describe what we are hearing. In this video, first of all, I'm going to recap the musical elements, which are the building blocks of music, the individual parts that music can be broken down into. There are quite a lot to remember, 9, so we use the mnemonic MAD t-shirt to remember them all. You can see these listed on the screen. After recapping, I'll talk about the 3 that we will be focusing on today. Melody means tune, so the organisation of the pitches, the high notes and the low notes. Articulation means how the notes are sung or played. Listen to how the notes are really short and detached to start with, and the second half, the notes move smoothly from one to the other. Dynamics means volume, so how loud or soft the notes are played. Listen to how the music starts very quietly and then becomes much louder at the end. Texture is the different layers, so how many notes are played together. See how this example starts with 2 notes being played and then the texture thickens, where at the end there are 5 notes played at the same time. Structure is what order the music is put in. In this example, there is a second melody which answers the original one that we have heard previously. Harmony means which chords are used and how they are played. In this example, you can hear some broken major chords being played underneath the melody. Instrumentation is which instruments play the music. The melody is now being played by a different instrument, the trumpet. Rhythm is how long and short the notes are, and what patterns they can be put in. And finally, time and tempo. Time is how you count the music, and tempo is how fast that count is. Okay, so let's put some of these concepts into practice. First of all, we are going to look at 2 elements of music that are very closely linked: time and tempo. Every piece of music has a pulse. This is the underlying regular beat of a piece of music. However, it would be impossible to count the pulse throughout all the way up to large numbers, so we divide the pulse up into smaller groups of numbers. Time is how you count the music and how the pulse is divided. Tempo is how fast the pulse is counted. We are going to listen to a piece of music called In the Hall of the Mountain King by Edvard Grieg, a Norwegian composer, except we are going to listen deliberately and try and describe what we are hearing. On the screen there is a grid that we are going to follow when we listen. Along the left hand side are the different parts, so melody, accompaniment and the chords. Along the top tells us which bar we're in. This is the grouping of the pulse. And along the bottom is the pulse and what time it is counted in. Each box is 1 bar long, and there are 4 beats of the pulse in each bar. Therefore, we will be counting in a time of 4. See if you can count along with the music. See how easy it was to count along? This is because we were counting the pulse in groups of 4. If the pulse wasn't divided into a smaller number, it would be impossible to keep track of where you are. Now, the time of the pulse can change depending on the piece of music. It could be counted in 4, or 3, or 6, or even 5, but 4 is by far the most common. How you count the pulse is written at the beginning of a piece of music here. It is called the time signature, as it tells you what time to count in. To find out what time to count in, simply look at the top number of the time signature. The speed at which we count the pulse can also change. This is called the tempo. See what happens to the tempo as the piece progresses. So, the tempo increased as the music progressed. However, it didn't go from a medium tempo to a very fast tempo suddenly. It happened gradually as the pulse sped up. When music speeds up, it's called accelerando, like when you accelerate in a car to go faster. BPM simply means beats per minute. How many beats of the pulse do we count in 60 seconds? So 60 BPM would be a beat every second. 120 BPM would be 2 beats every second. The higher the number of BPMs, the faster the tempo is. Now, over the top of the pulse, we can have different rhythms. These are patterns of long and short notes. This piece has 3 different patterns all happening at the same time. I have added a metronome to count the pulse. That's the clicking noise you can hear. Have a listen and see if you can hear the 3 different individual patterns over the top of the pulse. Now, how high or low a note is on the stave tells us its pitch, but what the note looks like tells us its duration, how long it lasts for. You can have a note like this. This is a semi-breve and it lasts for 4 beats of the pulse. Or you can have a short note like this. This is a quaver and lasts for half a beat of the pulse. When we have lots of short notes one after another, we beam their tails together to make them easier to read, like this. And just like we have notes to tell us to play a sound on our instrument, we also have arrests which tell us to be silent. You still count the pulse, you just don't play anything when there's a rest. Each note has its own rest, which is the same length, but just for silence. I'm not going to go through them all individually now, but on the screen is a summary. So, in this piece, there are different rhythmic patterns being played by different instruments in the orchestra. Let's take a listen to all 3 together. Underneath you'll be able to hear a tapping. This again is the metronome that I put in to count the beats of the pulse underneath the rhythms. Okay, now let's listen to each of the rhythms separately. Here is the accompaniment. So, you should be able to hear that the bassoon is playing a note on every beat of the pulse. This is called an on-beat rhythm. Now, let's look at the rhythm of the melody being played by the cellos. You can see and hear that most of these notes are a lot shorter than the previous part we looked at. It is also worth noting that whilst these rhythms are different, they share the same pulse. Finally, let's look at the next rhythmic pattern. This part has chords being played on beats 2 and 4, with rests happening on beats 1 and 2. Note that even though there is no sound happening on beats 1 and 2, you still count the pulse.